My colleagues, and thank you for joining us at the 2024 House Democratic Issues Conference. We're thrilled to be here in Congresswoman Wexton's district. Jennifer is such an incredible public servant, a fighter, and we're grateful for her hospitality, along with the Virginia delegation, in welcoming us here today. House Democrats are united, and we're coming together around an economic agenda that builds off of the progress that we've made since the pandemic. We began in 2024 with another strong jobs report, bringing the total number of jobs created under the Biden-Harris administration at 14.8 million. Unemployment at record lows, inflation is cooling, and wages are rising. But we know that not everyone is feeling the benefits of that economic recovery yet, and House Democrats are ready to finish the job. We're going to talk about our work to put people over politics, lowering costs, creating good-paying jobs, building affordable housing, and implementing the landmark pieces of legislation that we passed to raise the quality of life for every American. But none of that success would be possible without the leadership team. Leader Jeffries, Whip Clark, Vice Chair Lieu, Assistant Leader Clyburn, the DCCC, and the entire leadership team. And all of us are grateful to the work of Suzan DelBene as she leads us to the path to reclaiming the majority in 2024. That's our focus as we move forward, and that's what will drive our discussions throughout the next few days. With that, happy to introduce Vice Chair Ted Lieu.
Thank you, Chairman Aguilar, for your leadership. It is an honor to work with you. And I want to start off by saying that there is a lot of good news about the economy starting this year. Consumer sentiment is up, wages are up, job creation is up. You know what else is up? The stock market. The S&P 500 and the Dow Jones are setting record highs. And you know who's taking notice? Donald Trump. He's trying to take credit now for the stock market under the Biden-Harris administration. And why is he doing something so ridiculous? Because he understands the economy is getting better and he cannot stop it. And that's because Democrats, when we were in control, put people over politics, and we passed laws to help the American family go forward. From the Inflation Reduction Act, the CHIPS and Science Act, to the infrastructure law, those laws are working and growing our economy. What are Republicans focused on? Stupid impeachments and banning abortions. And this issues conference is going to highlight the stark contrast between Democrats, who are putting people over politics, and Republicans, who are putting politics over people. And now it's my great honor to introduce our brilliant and visionary leader, Hakeem Jeffries. He has unified the Democratic Caucus, and every day he thinks about how we move the American family forward. He also stood up to MAGA Republican extremism. It was under Hakeem Jeffries' leadership that the Democratic Caucus supplied the majority of votes to stop a catastrophic default on our debts. It was under Hakeem Jeffries' leadership that the Democratic Caucus supplied the majority of votes to stop not one, but two government shutdowns. And it's under Hakeem Jeffries' leadership that America is going to see our best days yet to come. And with that, I want to hear from Leader Jeffries.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Vice Chair Lieu, for your very generous words of introduction, for your leadership. Thank you, Chairman Aguilar, for once again convening us here as House Democrats for the 2024 Issues Conference. In my previous capacity as Chair of the House Democratic Caucus, I had the opportunity to preside over and put together, along with Katherine and then Pete, 4 different issues conference events. I'm glad to yield that responsibility to Chairman Aguilar, who's doing an incredible job. It's also an honor to be here with the distinguished leadership team who you will hear from as we gather united, committed, and energized about the opportunities in front of us to continue to put people over politics, finish the job that we started in the last Congress, build a healthy economy, grow our middle class, of course continue to fight for lower costs and for safer communities. The events of this week have once again established that there's a clear contrast between House Democrats and our extreme MAGA Republican counterparts. House Democrats will continue to choose common sense solutions to solving problems on behalf of hardworking American families. House Republicans continue to choose chaos. House Democrats will continue to defend our democracy. House Republicans continue to choose dysfunction. And House Democrats will continue to work on the economy and making life better for everyday Americans, while House Republicans continue to choose extremism. When we emerge from this conference, we'll continue to have a clear plan of action. We look forward to interacting with President Biden, Vice President Harris, members of the administration, advocates, and stakeholders from all across the country with a clear vision for the mission that is in front of us to continue to deliver for the American people. And now it's my great honor to yield to one of my classmates and good friends, partners in leadership, who has proven that she knows how to count and she knows how to unify Democrats on behalf of the American people. I yield to our distinguished whip, Katherine Clark.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here in Virginia, and I want to thank Chairman Aguilar and Vice Chair Lieu for bringing us together, for organizing this conference, giving us the opportunity to collaborate, to strategize, and to mobilize for the year ahead. And I want to thank the entire leadership team, Leader Clyburn, DCCC Chair Joe Neguse, and I will get to Suzan DelBene, our fearless D-Trip Chair, but a special thanks to Leader Jeffries for a year of skilled, steady, strong leadership throughout the MAGA mayhem. And yes, he is teaching me alliteration as we go. 2024 is a new year, but we face the same chaos from the House majority. This MAGA majority has managed to be both the most extreme majority in modern House history and the least productive. In 2023, only 3% of the bills the House majority passed became law. Contrast that to 2022, when Democrats were in the majority and 45% of the bills we passed became law. And it is Democrats who have provided, as Vice Chair Lieu laid out, the majority of votes that avoided a default, avoided 3 GOP shutdowns, passed the National Defense Authorization Act, and lifted 16 million children out of poverty with an expanded child tax credit. Republicans can't count their own votes, so instead they count on us. And they're unable to rally behind anything but extremism. House Democrats are unified because we share values. We share basic core beliefs. We show up for work for the same reason, to do the best by the people who sent us to Washington, to put people over politics, to grow the economy by growing the middle class, to build a country where everyone has a fair shot at success. We have an agenda that aligns with what the American people expect of their elected leaders, building safer communities by getting weapons of war off the street, lowering costs of childcare, health care, and housing, and making reproductive freedom the law of the land. And tonight, I am proud to be hosting a session that will be discussing just that. And I hope tomorrow morning you will join us and the women leaders of our caucus on how we will restore reproductive justice and stop the GOP's march to a national abortion ban. Because that's what the American people want. leaders who will fight for freedom, a Congress that will help President Biden finish the job, not another do-nothing MAGA majority. In 2025, the People's House will get back to work for the American people. And it is a privilege to introduce the woman, the leader, who is going to make it happen, our incredibly talented and tenacious DCCC Chair, Suzan DelBene.
Thank you, Katherine, and good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be here with all of you. And thanks to the efforts of the entire House Democratic Caucus, we are well positioned to have the right resources, the candidates, the message, and the momentum to take back the House in November for the American people. The DCCC recently announced an incredibly strong year of fundraising, having outraised the NRCC by $30 million and bringing in a total of $121 million in 2023. In addition to the committee's strong fundraising, Democratic frontliners and challengers, on average, have outraised Republican opponents last quarter. With our resources, we will amplify our message and turn out voters. We're working to ensure that we reach a diverse coalition of voters through our Power the People initiative and our In It Together hubs. These programs represent a $35 million investment to persuade and mobilize communities of color, ensuring that we're strategic and intentional about how we engage voters to combat misinformation. We know these communities are critical to our Democratic coalition, and we aren't taking a single voter for granted. We also announced our first slate of red to blue candidates last week. We have multiple paths to take back the majority, and the geographic diversity of this list includes candidates from Iowa, Michigan, Montana, California, Arizona, New York, and more. And it reflects the many opportunities we have. These candidates also reflect the broad and diverse Democratic coalition, presenting a clear contrast to the chaos, dysfunction, and extremism of their Republican opponents. And the first real opportunity to demonstrate our momentum and resolve is just a few days away. The people of New York's 3rd Congressional District deserve responsible leadership and someone they can trust to represent them. Former Representative Tom Suozzi is the perfect fit for the district. He has a proven record of delivering for his community. He's run a very strong campaign in an incredibly short amount of time. We're doing all we can to engage voters and send them back to Congress. This election is about our rights, our freedoms, our democracy, and our future. And the DCCC is committed to taking back the House this November and ensuring that Leader Jeffries becomes Speaker Jeffries. So I want to thank all of my colleagues for their incredible support and hard work. Thank all of you for joining us at the Issues Conference. And now it's my honor to introduce someone who has been a longtime leader of the Democratic Caucus, who has been a mentor to all of us and a strong voice standing up for our communities across the country, our Assistant Leader, Jim Clyburn.
Thank you very much, Chair DelBene, and let me thank all of our leadership team here for the tremendous efforts they're making on behalf of the American people. Last night, I had the great honor of introducing Leader Jeffries to a pretty big crowd of upbeat people who were looking forward to this campaign season with so much enthusiasm. It puts to great doubt all that we've been hearing to the contrary. As many of you know, I sort of ground everything I do in the history of this great country of ours. And last week, I went to my bookshelf and I pulled off Martin Luther King Jr.'s last book. Everybody talks about his dream, but in his last book, it was entitled, "Where do we go from here? Chaos or community?" And as I looked through that book, thinking about where we are as a country, where the political environment is right now. The other side of the aisle, as the leader said in his presentation on the floor and yesterday, all about chaos. Our side of the aisle looking for ways to build community. And as prescient as Martin Luther King Jr. was in so many of his writings and his speeches, nothing is more prescient than that last book. And I think that what the Democrats are doing is demonstrating how we repair lives and build communities. And that's what our agenda is all about. President Biden has been talking recently about promises made, promises kept. And what we're going to be doing over the next several months is reminding people of the promises that were made and reminding them of the promises that have been kept. But we're also going to be talking about the way forward. And to give you just one example, when President Biden talked about eliminating student loan debt, everybody's been writing about that one little part of the promise that got stopped by the United States Supreme Court. Nobody has been writing until recently about the other 4 parts of the promise that resulted in $137 billion in debt elimination for 3.7 million people. But we're leaning forward on that, and you will hear in a few days of the projection for the next 4 years, another 75,000 borrowers having their debt eliminated every 2 months, another 175,000 for the next 4 years. Promises made, promises kept. However, leaning forward as we go off into the future. And with that, let me yield now back to our chair. Thank you so much. Thank you.
I could sit and listen to Mr. Clyburn all day, tell some stories. Questions?
We saw obviously what happened on the House floor last night with the minorcas impeachments, the Senate border bill that was negotiated, that Republicans said that wasn't enough, and now it looks like that may be dead. Going forward, what is Democrats' message with regard to the border as we head to 2024? Because that has shown up in a lot of polls in these early states as the chief issue on voters' minds.
Look, we believe in solving this issue, but we believe in also recognizing that some of the provisions that are being discussed are significant policy changes that are being considered. And so we have stood behind the president's national security supplemental time and time again. We believe that there should be order at the border. We believe that we should surge resources to Customs and Border Patrol, to ICE agents, to immigration judges, to reforming our asylum system to make sure it works for people. Those are the things that we have and continue to stand for. And it says a lot that the Senate backs away from their own deal after saying that this was their top priority, after saying that this was Democrats' responsibility. They negotiated a deal and then within 24 hours backed away from their own deal. And they're doing that right now in real time, backing away from provisions that they themselves negotiated for one reason and one reason only, because they want to because they're doing the bidding of Donald Trump. That's the only reason. And so it's not lost on us what this is about. And we stand ready to work across the aisle. But I'll tell you, no significant immigration and border policy will get done unless it's done in a bipartisan way. And so we look forward to working with our colleagues wherever and whenever we can in order to get that done. Scott?
Yeah, a question for Leader Jeffries. I know you speak regularly with the Speaker of the House. Have you spoken with him about this
I have not had a conversation with him today, but I expect that we may speak over the next few days. Once we have an understanding as to what happens in the Senate today, but with or without the extreme MAGA Republicans, House Democrats are committed to getting our national security funding priorities over the finish line. It is clear that the time for extreme MAGA Republican political gamesmanship is over. Their my way or the highway approach has gone nowhere. And the only way forward in terms of meeting the national security needs of the American people is to work together in bipartisan fashion to fund Israel, fund Ukraine, fund our allies in the Indo-Pacific region, and provide humanitarian assistance to Palestinian civilians in Gaza who are in harm's way through no fault of their own, and other civilians who are in theaters of war all across the world. That's the only way forward, and we will achieve it if the Republicans abandon the chaos and work together with House Democrats in common sense fashion.
Thank you. So I know you mentioned a lot of President Biden's wins, but he still has a 55% disapproval rating. Despite all of these accomplishments that you're saying, why do you think that the majority of Americans are disapproving of his job? Are you worried that he may sink some of your frontliners?
Not at all. I mean, and I'm happy to yield to Leader Clyburn and Chair DelBene. Look, we are going to make our case to the American public, and part of this conference is highlighting the steps that we have done, the implementation work on delivering job creation and investments in our community, the dollars that are going out to our communities in the short term as well. It's our responsibility to help talk about that and to amplify that within our communities. But we expect to hear from the Vice President and the President, as well, to make their case with us to work in a coordinated way to make sure that we're meeting the needs of the American people. Mr. Clyburn?
Well, I always say the proof is in the pudding. We just saw in the South Carolina primary last week. I saw all the headlines going into that primary. But I also spent a lot of time on the campuses. I have 8 HBCUs in South Carolina. 7 of them are in my district. I'm a graduate of one. And it's kind of interesting, but the highest percentage that Joe Biden got in South Carolina was in the county with 2 HBCUs and a community college. And he got 98% of the vote in that county. And when I talked to those young people, they were all in for Joe Biden. And I keep hearing that he's lost the youth vote. I keep hearing he's lost the black vote. South Carolina increased black participation in that primary by 30%. And Joe Biden came out of it with 96% of the vote. The proof is in the pudding. I know that most of these headlines come from those people who are pretty proficient at tweeting and whatever else you do. But voters show up for Joe Biden.
Question?
Yeah. Just a quick follow-up on that question.
This one's going to be a hard one, so I'm going to give it to Joe Neguse. So just go ahead. Yeah. No.
But just curious though, you still have these polls here. You had President Biden. He had a weaker and solid blue Colorado going into here we are in 2024. Also, there is a concern as to whether or not Mr. Biden can go into these polarized states with your candidates. Will he be traveling very often to help your candidates in these states? Will he be campaigning with your candidates? Is there concern that he's going to be bringing them down? How often is he going to be campaigning with your candidates, given how polarized the map is right now?
That sounds like a Susan DelBene question. So Joe Neguse is the happiest person in the room right now.
You can follow up, Joe, with anything. First, I'd say that we have incredible candidates and frontliners running, and a little bit in response to the previous question, when you talk about when people see what's happening on the ground in their districts, that's when it really sinks in, the great work that happened under President Biden and with House Democrats last Congress. So that's why you see Republicans taking credit for projects where they voted against the funding, but seem to be happy to go out there because they know it makes a difference to these communities. And that's what is happening right now. As those dollars roll out, you're seeing those groundbreakings, you're seeing the projects going, and that's having an impact on voters. And they want to see, in our battleground districts, they want to see governance work. They don't want chaos and dysfunction. Now, on the House side, we have many, many different races across the country where we're playing in. They're all uniquely different. Some are in states like California, New York, that are probably not going to be heavily contested on a presidential level. Others will be. So we expect that candidates are going to run campaigns based on what they think is right for their district. And some of those are going to be areas where you're not going to see others come as much, and some may be. And I think that really depends on the candidates. Each of these districts is very different, and we want them to run the campaigns that they want to see. But we're going to make sure we support them in whatever way we can and help them to continue to make sure we show the contrast between the great work that Democrats have done and the chaos, extremism, and dysfunction from Republicans. He'll be on the campaign trail with some. I think, like I said, it depends on where they have their map, where they're going. We obviously have focus where we have our kind of battleground and frontline districts.
Well, no, I would add, at the risk exactly of hazarding that, I would just simply say we've talked a lot about polls. One poll we have not talked about, and we're going to spend some time this afternoon detailing this, is the historic disapproval of this Congress. One has to look, or one is hard to find, rather, any Congress that is as unpopular as this Republican-led Congress in the modern history of our Congress, the most unproductive literally since the Great Depression, the least number of laws passed in 90 years. So the polls that we've seen and the polls that we'll share with our caucus today indicate that the American public is deeply dissatisfied with the way in which Republicans have governed, or lack thereof, over the course of the last 13 months. And the chaos, the confusion, the dysfunction juxtaposed against House Democrats that are putting people over politics, lowering costs, growing the middle class, building safer communities. I think that's a contrast that's going to resonate with the American people, and it's an important story for us to tell. We've got to do more in telling that story with respect to the prior question, and that's what we'll be doing over the course of the next 8 months.
Last question. Back.
So you have multiple representatives from labor unions here this week, and I was just wondering, what is going to be your message to get the union vote in some swinging districts that are more purple, but that also have, kind of working class constituents who polls indicate might go for Trump?
Look, I think our message to the American public, but especially those hard men and women who are working in our labor community, is, judge us by the results, which is exactly what Leader Clyburn said. Judge us by the votes that we have made, the work that we have done, and the dollars that we have put on the streets in our communities, building waterways, tunnels, bridges, roads. All of that infrastructure work is going to be done across the country by hardworking men and women in labor. They're the backbone of our country. They have built our country, and they will continue to, if given the proper investments. And the economic benefit that has for our supply chains, for job creation, for our economies locally, is not lost on any of us. So we are excited about that work ahead. We're excited to make the case and to work hand in hand with our friends in the labor community to tell that story. Thank you so much.